Thank you very much giving me an opportunity with very eminent panelists to join in on this very important subject of public asset monetization and recycling. The government, as you know, and you must have seen from the media and otherwise, have been really emphasizing this aspect of the work, which has sort of not earlier been so much there. But the government feels that it's a very important part of infrastructure building. And I think if I can say so, if I may say so, there are two strands to the asset monetization in the government. The first relates to the non-core assets and generally the assets which are, not really being properly used or they're idle. There are many land assets, for example. There are assets which are in the form of townships. There are assets in the form of other, buildings and so on, which if used properly, could also fetch a lot of revenue. And that is one bucket. The second bucket is, of course, the core assets which are being used by our. Incidentally, the DIPAM is actually very much involved with the management of capital management of the central public sector enterprises, and these enterprises have been holding on to a lot of core assets which are being actually used, and the idea is that how they could also be monetized. And what are the objectives of the government? Well, the objectives of the government are actually to unlock the value of suboptimally underutilized assets, to get greater financial leverage and higher economic activity and generate employment opportunities. Then the use of new and innovative measures such as asset monetization to raise funds and support the infrastructure financing in the country. The help government-owned infrastructure entities to recycle capital and generate funds to spend on new projects. Focus on alignment of the policy objectives with sectoral goals such as capacity addition or efficiency improvement to exact maximum value, and of course create a framework for attracting long-term institutional investments on the strength of future receivables. Now, a number of initiatives, and so let me talk about the core assets first. The core assets are, the monetization models that the government has tried or going to try is, for example, the toll operator model, the TOT model, which has been used by the, by the National Highway Authority of India more recently. And they have also identified about 6,000 kilometers of TOT projects going forward. Some of them have gone off for bid already, and some of them will also come up for bidding going forward. And then we have, again, from NHAI is that hybrid annuity model, HAM, where some of the, basically the policies, wherever we have stranded assets, how the HAM could be used to really bring in money, financing, and, create liquidity, and so that those projects could be completed. The Infrastructure Investment Trust, which is something which is becoming quite fashionable. Of course, Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs only yesterday approved, the power grid InvIT of about a gross block of about 7,000 crore going forward. So I think on InvIT, we will probably going to see a lot of activity going forward from other departments. I mean, we have pipelines, we have transmission lines, we have other kind of assets which are being used. Core where a certain amount of revenue stream is certain, and operational risks are not there. So I think those are the kind of projects could be woven into the InvITs. And of course, REITs are there, and transfer of development rights, where they could be quite useful for sustainable urban development. And these have been traditionally been used, but they need to be used more importantly by some of the government authorities or the municipal bodies. where there is a lot of potential. So we have these, as I said, models which are going forward. Then you have infrastructure debt funds, of course. That is where more from the point of view of financing of infrastructure projects. Now, this is about a general about the core policies, and there we have institutional structure has been also created in the form of a core group of secretaries on asset monetization. We call it CGAM, and the CGAM is headed by cabinet secretary and all important secretaries, especially of those infrastructure ministries, are in this committee. They identify, projects, and I think NITI Aayog is the secretariat for this core group, and they monitor, identify, push, champion. And I think I'm glad to see NITI Aayog representative Aman on this panel. Then we have the other stream, which is actually the, as I said, non-core assets. In the non-core assets, again, we have we could categorize as somewhere there are companies which are going for strategic disinvestments. Those are the companies where, for example, there could be a, for example, Air India. Then you could have some of the land assets, etc., which land and buildings, which may not be actually very useful to running of the company as such, and could do without the new investor. And those are the ones which could be actually disposed of separately, either transferring it through SPV or demerging. And then you have uh, areas where non-core assets per se, where means we need to have a consciousness that these non-core assets can potentially yield a lot of revenue, either through a direct contractual approach where certain upfront payment can be picked up, or annuities could be charged to different models. Some of the non-core projects we have, for example, in the government sector, a lot of developments in Delhi where land has been used in order to finance the creation of government housing. But actually, government not really investing anything, but the land becoming an important way of financing. And because some of it could be used to actually build, create assets which can be monetized in the private sector, which is NBCC has had successful models of development in urban space. And I think that model can actually go forward in several Indian cities where the government authorities do have land. What DIPAM, our department, has actually done in coordination with the Department of Economic Affairs is actually to how to actually bring this awareness and consciousness, where we have asking every department to have an asset monetization plan going forward, and also for every CPSC to have also an asset monetization plan, so that the first level we want for them to really engage in identifying projects, identifying opportunities, and have a plan. So the second thing is, of course, to push them to actually doing activities around that plan. And in order to do an encourage framework, we are also, we have what is called an MOU system, the Memorandum of Understanding, which every administrative ministry signs with the CPSC every year. And there is certain performance-linked incentives are also linked to that MOU. We are trying to actually bring in a certain framework where asset monetization is also regarded as an important milestone to be achieved. There's certain minimum to be done, and those which are performing more than the minimum to be suitably rewarded in the form of extra recognition. So this framework will also promote this particular activity that we have taken to start with an asset monetization plan, and then going forward, implementation of that plan, yearly implementation, and have some milestones and so on. So broadly, what we really see is that, more bang for the buck from what we have, and in the process, trying to, create infrastructure activity. So this is, I think, my initial remarks, and I'm open to questions.
Yeah. Mr. Pandey, my first question is, how has COVID impacted the timelines, if at all? What are the targets you have for this fiscal year, if any?
Well, I think the COVID, as you know, has impacted, several activities. Of course, it has impacted infrastructure as well. But infrastructure revival, infrastructure spending is also the way to get out of COVID. So it is in a way while we have an impact down there in the infrastructure sector, but this is one way of revival of activity because a lot of public investments are being emphasized. Now, this is one way.
So my question was, how has it impacted the asset monetization plans?
Yeah, the asset monetization plan have been impacted to to some extent, but at the same time, I think this is also this opportunity being used to push the CPSTs to take quicker decisions around this, because we have seen, and then in the stock markets also there is an investment appetite. There could be, the things are mixed, because it could be that in the physical activity on the real estate side, things have got subdued due to the market conditions. But there are investors going around which need a certain amount. So, for example, in the core asset monetization, the opportunities are there, very much there. It's a question of bundling them, going to the market so that the investors are there. They could actually look at the cash flows and invest there. So it's a question of using this opportunity at this point of time, especially on the core sector side. On the non-core sector side, there is a bit of a dampener, particularly if you want to dispose properties, say in Mumbai and things like that. And I think because to some extent, physical site inspections, etc. This is in particular that we have when we are engaged in some of the MTNL, BSNL property disposal. We find that there have been some issues around it in terms of physical site inspections and so on. But I think also some issues around the local authorities, because the local authorities functioning is also not very optimal. In many times, you require permissions and so on for these things, which have been to some extent impacted in some larger cities. But we hope that going forward, this will ease, and we will move forward.